Welcome back to X's and O's. As always, I'm one of your co-hosts, Peter Borkowski. I'm joined by our other co-host, as always, Mr. Bubba Hayes. Bubba, how are we doing tonight?
Well, we're hanging in there, Peter. It's good to see you after a week off.
So I took a little week off. You were preoccupied early in the week, and then middle of the week, I was enjoying
Hmm.
not enjoying because it wasn't great results for the old Salukis, but some Arch Madness in St. Louis. Here we are on Tuesday of this week before I go to Iowa for the MVC women's tournament. So, whole lot's going on, but we found some time to set up a little recording and just kind of gonna be shooting the shit tonight, going over a variety of topics, kind of a interesting time in sports. We got a lot going on. Nothing super high profile, I would say, yet, but almost a calm before the storm before we get into March
Hmm.
Madness. And then we got the NFL draft next month, I believe. And then sooner than later, NFL, NHL, and NBA playoffs will start and the MLB season. So a little bit of a reprieve before things get really crazy, even though there's still plenty to talk about. But I think we'll start. This was going to be our episode last week before it got canned. So we'll kind of
Hmm.
condense it, which might be good because I'm not super knowledgeable on it. But obviously, we are a couple weeks past the Winter Olympics ending out in Milan in Italy. Um, and plenty of talking points, I'm sure, to come from the Olympics. I guess I'll start.
Hmm.
I'll ask you, are you a big Olympics guy?
Generally I am. Yeah, I would say I usually like some of the summer events more than the winter events. Just as far as there's obviously a couple of big events at each that seemingly most people tune into or at least kind of see what happens. But the summer events usually I'm watching a lot more of the, maybe non like major events, so to speak. But yeah, I would say I'm definitely a big fan of the Olympics. For some of those sports, it's the only times of the year that most people will ever watch them. So that is
True.
kind of interesting to kind of either learn or kind of relearn how, different sports work. But yeah, definitely an interesting 2 weeks over in Milan.
Yeah, and I'll talk about this more when we talk about another topic we're going to hit tonight. I've never been a huge Olympics guy. I mean, I pay
Hmm.
attention because it's hard not to, but I've never been one of
Yeah.
those big diehard, follow your country kind of
Yeah.
guys. It's more of the big stories that come out of the Olympics. Um,
Hmm.
so I guess, do we want to do the hockey thing?
Yeah, I think that we could probably, that was probably the
For
elephant in
the
the room, so we might
I
as well
guess
tackle that.
we can tackle that one and then go over a couple other brief thoughts if we have any before we move on. Yeah, obviously USA swept the gold medals in hockey. Women beat Canada. They were both in overtime. Um, so
Hmm.
Obviously, congrats to all those Olympians. But unfortunately, the bigger story to kind of come out of the hockey sphere of the
Yeah.
Olympics was the men's post-game celebration. Obviously, they invited
Hmm.
in special guest Cash Cash Patel. What a crazy statement.
Say that with a
Um,
straight face. Yeah.
and then Cash called old Donnie, and
Hmm.
Trumper made some remarks about the women's team that the men's team laughed about. Um, and I'll start with this before we can go into those comments. I I almost feel bad for the men's team. I know this is gonna make
Yeah,
me.
I
This
can
is gonna
see that.
sound. This is gonna get me can. Hopefully, this doesn't get me canceled. Um, even ignoring the comments for now, I don't know why Trump has chosen them to be the poster boys for the U.S. for the last,
Hmm.
whatever that week was. After they
Yeah.
won, obviously called them in the locker room and then invited them to the State of the Union. Had them in the White House, where he served them his finest McDonald's orders. Um, it's like, look, it's great they won, like obviously, and we can celebrate
Hmm.
that because they beat, historically the best hockey nation and probably still the best hockey
Hmm.
nation in the world in Canada. But like, why? why I just it's what's going on that we're making them these national heroes above everyone else.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a little more in tune with political stuff than I am,
Yeah.
but it's I mean, is it because they beat is it because they beat Canada and we seem to be in a
Hmm.
standoff with Canada for some reason or another? I just don't get it. Like why did he look at hockey and
Yeah.
go, yeah, that's the group of guys who I'm gonna plaster everywhere for the next week?
Well, I really hate to oversimplify this for you, Peter, and this is probably going to sound very childish, but it's very likely the answer. And the answer is that the players on the team like him, and he likes people that like him. You can, say what you want about a lot of athletes, and their political affiliations, but it's pretty clear that the sport of hockey, maybe less so its fan base, but even still, its fan base definitely does. The sport of hockey very much, kind of leans conservative,
Which
and
is it
they
is
out of those,
so it's sorry to interrupt. It's so that's so weird to me because it's one of the most international leagues of the big four leagues in the US. It's maybe the most international. I mean, it's that or baseball. I would, go on a limb and say.
yeah,
Now it helps that most of the international hockey players are also, you know, white, to just say it.
yeah,
They're European or they're Canadian. So even though there's a
yeah,
lot of national diversity, there's not a lot of that kind of
yeah,
diversity.
ethnic,
Um,
yeah,
yeah,
hmm
ethnic diverse. So I mean, that's I agree with you that a lot of the hockey players I've met definitely lean that way too. But that's always just been so a little confusing to me. Um,
yeah. I mean, you just have to keep in mind any sport that is primarily played by, rich white kids is usually going to lean that way. Just a little bit more specifically about hockey. I mean, that's a sport that is just kind of it's the culture around it, is just very heavily that way. But, more specifically on the Trump thing, like it's been very clear for a while that a lot of those players have a pretty good, have had good conversations with him. The Kachuk brothers, obviously, that family is pretty prominent here in St. Louis. They've been very public about their,
mhm.
support for him for a long time. I think that's really what it is. It's just you have a lot of athletes in one, and to be fair, a lot of those guys in that locker room haven't talked about talked about it before
No,
and maybe don't necessarily agree. So we don't want to condemn the whole locker room, but I think
right.
you can pretty much say for the most part that they all feel that way. And so I that was really why he tried to do that, and I think that was just from my view, because obviously we're all rooting for the US, but it was hard to really, at least for me personally, and just understanding what was going to happen, it was hard for me to be too invested in this team because I knew they would be used as a prop, a political prop in the
Mm,
immediate aftermath. And that's just kind of the sad reality of kind of what happened. And of course it did. And, unfortunately, they were kind of willing to be used that way. To their credit, the women's team, declined the White House
yeah.
invite, if that invite was even real, and didn't kind of want to be associated with it. But I think also, I do want to say, I don't on the whole, like, locker room joke that was made, I don't really blame. I think the men. I think that really was blown out of proportion. It was obviously not a joke that should have been made, but
Right.
it would kind of been would have been weird if there was like no laughter. Like that would have been really
Yeah.
awkward.
Well,
And
and
I would also just say, like, Jack Hughes is one of the main stars of the team, and he was one of the ones who took kind of the biggest brunt of that criticism. His mom is literally directly involved with the women's team. So
mm,
all the people out there saying that, oh, he's a big misogynist, laughing at that joke, like, I don't think he has any ill will towards the women's team. His mom is directly responsible for, a lot of the really positive results they've had
yeah,
the
I
last couple of years.
yeah, I land in a similar spot. I mean, you're right. The joke shouldn't have been made, and it would have been great to see one of the guys stand up and be like, you
Hmm.
know, hey, you don't make that joke, or if they just didn't laugh. But like you said, I find it really hard to blame them completely because, like,
Hmm.
one, they're hockey players, and political affiliations aside, hockey players usually aren't the shall we say, sharpest knives in the drawer. Um,
Hmm.
typically, um, they
Hmm.
were clearly, hammered by then. And I'm not trying to make excuses for anything, but it's like,
Yeah.
like you said, it's like, what do you kind of expect them to do? I mean, the president's on the line. You're standing in front of the FBI director, like, and you are definitely a altered state of mind. Um, it's like, yeah, you're probably going to laugh along and just go with it at the very least. Now, I'm sure there were some guys in that room
Hmm.
who genuinely did find that joke funny, which is a whole other issue. But,
Yeah.
this
Probably
whole,
quite a few of them, but yeah.
this whole, it's a team of misogynists and all. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I totally agree with that, but, yeah, like you
Yeah.
said, it was kind of hard to get behind them because like, you know, I don't know if likable is the right word, but and I think that's true of hockey. I think that hockey players aren't exactly the most personality driven either, I would say.
Yeah, that's
It's
fair.
not like
Yeah.
other sports where, these guys' personalities really make you invested in them. Um, kind of like we talked about in our last episode with Formula One drivers. Like it's kind of the complete opposite, where a lot of them feel, I don't want to say
Hmm.
stale, but like they just don't pop off, in
Yeah.
interviews. So it was kind of hard to get invested in that. And then, once this whole thing happened and they just became a prop, it's like, all right, really? Meanwhile,
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
women's team was having dinner with Stanley Tucci. And I'm like, oh, I'd much prefer
Hmm.
that. So that sounds way
Yeah.
better than McDonald's with old Trumper. So um, I
Yeah.
do like, last thing we'll say on this, because I do want to keep it moving. I do like we're starting to see more and more teams decline invites to the White House. Obviously, the women's team did.
Yeah.
The Seahawks did. Um, after they won the Super Bowl. So part of me enjoys, not part of me, I enjoy seeing that. Just
Yeah.
kind of
It's good
people
to
being
see.
like, no, we're not doing it.
Yeah.
So, um, all right. Any other thoughts on the Olympics? I'll say just from a kind of an outsider's perspective before I let you go, it it didn't seem as much pomp and circumstance as there usually is with the Olympics. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah.
And even then, I heard like, it even kind of felt there because apparently it was like very spread out and where everything was
Hmm.
throughout, Milan and wherever else they had facilities. So it kind of felt decentralized. And obviously there were great stories to come out of it, like there are every year. There are also
Hmm.
shitty stories like what we just talked about, but it just didn't feel like, I don't know if prevalent's the right word, but and I'm sure that's also part of just being in America, where we have so many other sports that, we care about
Hmm.
and get a lot of attention, while those smaller, European countries like Norway, who I think finished with the most golds, if I'm not mistaken, um,
Hmm. Yeah.
one of those Scandinavian countries, like that's kind of what they live for. Like a lot of the things they're really good at, like
Hmm.
you said, they're really only prevalent during the Olympics. I mean, how many other times are you going to
Hmm.
go ski a mile and then grab a gun and start shooting stuff? Like as badass as that
Hmm.
is, like you just don't really see it outside the Olympics. So I don't know. That was just kind of
Yeah.
my take. Was I wasn't. I just. It felt like I didn't hear as much about it as I usually do. I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know where
I
you
think
land on
that's
that.
I think it's fair to say it seemed to be a little bit more muted than usual. I think part of that is just that a lot of the Winter Olympic sports just don't have the following that you'd see in the summer. But usually the figure skating, that gets quite a bit of buzz, and there was definitely
Right.
some around it this year. But other than that, you know, I think some of the freestyle skiing maybe didn't get talked about a little much. Lindsey Vonn had that big crash pretty
I
early
was
on in the
gonna,
training
yeah.
run. But
Um,
yeah, I would definitely agree. It was definitely a little bit more muted this year. I think the big storyline is just going to be, obviously we're going to be hosting the next one, the
right.
Summer Olympics coming up in 2 years, and I think
28,
that's
right.
going to be, re- really interesting to see how that's received. Is I think that'll be interesting. There's obviously a lot of other stuff going on in the world, and specifically the U.S.'s reputation. I think that's going to be interesting to see how it's received both here and abroad, because obviously we're not the most popular people in the world right now. I can pretty much promise you that. So I do kind of look forward to seeing how that kind of transpires.
Well, in 28, I mean, that's an election year too, which
Yeah.
kind of spices things up. I mean, obviously, the current admin will still be in office during that year, but yeah, that will be interesting. And like you said, I think part of it this year was like, oh, at least two of the big American, figures in the Olympics kind of flamed out for different reasons. Obviously, Vaughn had her
Mhm.
crash. And then I always mispronounce his name. The quad god, whatever the hell, whatever his
Oh,
actual his
oh yeah,
name is.
Melanin, yeah.
Yeah, Melanin. Obviously he kind of flopped in his
Hmm.
in his last run. So obviously still plenty of good stories. I know Alyssa Liu's been blowing up recently after her performance.
Yeah.
And so there's still plenty of good things to take away. But like I said, a lot of those the winter sports, even though I think the winter sports are more entertaining personally, just because they're batshit crazy sometimes. Um, and,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, let's ski off a slope and fly through the air for a while and just see what happens. Like I said,
Mm-hmm.
those sports aren't huge in America. Um, so compared to the Summer Olympics where you have basketball and you have, I believe you have baseball, I believe, or they will have baseball
This
maybe.
is I they will. They haven't for a
Right,
while, but yeah, they
right. They
will.
will have baseball. We'll have flag football. Let's go. Um, you know,
Mm,
yeah, I see your face. Lacrosse is
yeah.
getting into the Olympics finally. Um, even track and field is much more popular in America than, some of those winter
Yeah.
sports are,
Swimming.
swimming. So, I think that was part of it too, but oh well, it's done.
Hmm.
Um, move on
Yep.
to move on to LA 28. So, all right.
Yeah.
I sent you a list earlier of some of the talking points. I'll let you pick where we want to go next.
You want to just touch on NFL free agency a bit and kind of some of the
Yeah, we'll
hubbub
do
around
that.
that?
We'll do that, and then we'll take a break, and then we have at least two other talking points when we come back.
Hmm.
Yeah, NFL free agency opened up yesterday. Um, Going on, or at least the tampering period did. I don't think many of these signings
Yeah.
are actually like official yet, but
Yeah.
like we know what's coming. Um,
Hmm.
Actually, I do want to start with not free agency, just something that broke probably less than an hour
Yeah.
ago. The Max Crosby
Yeah.
trade got nixed by the Ravens,
Hmm.
which is obviously huge. Crosby's one of the best defensive players in the league, probably the best defensive player quote unquote on the market this offseason, even though it has to
Yeah.
be through trade. I mean, it's either him or Hendrickson, and I think most people take Crosby. So yeah, it
Hmm.
was due to something came up in the what do you call it? The medical,
Physical
medical,
screening.
physical screening. Yep,
Yeah.
that's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm interested, especially because one of the teams very clearly in on him is my team, so I'm invested in
Yeah.
this. I'm interested to see where this goes now. If this scares teams away, um, I think at the very least it's going to lower his price because the Ravens gave up. The headline was two
Yeah.
first rounders. I doubt you get
Yeah.
that for him now if he's got a physical
Hmm.
issue. I
Yeah.
would,
And I'm gonna hold off on saying what it could be because I don't want to fall for any false flag tweets. But there was one tweet that I saw from a reporter who it didn't look like a fake account. I hadn't heard of it, so I'm not going to say what it was. But it seemed like there could have been some sort of issue in the physical that maybe would raise some more kind of alarm bells, not
hmm,
injury related.
Right.
So I'm sure there'll be some more looking into that. As I said, I don't want to talk about it if it's accurate, but I think you're definitely right. It could very well affect his value.
I
And just kind of odd the way that that all transpired to me,
I
you
mean,
know?
I don't know the process of, trading for someone and when the physical
Yeah.
happens, but it was I mean, I forgot the exact day he got traded. I think it was last Tuesday, I want to say. Um,
Hmm.
because I it broke when I was on my way to go work out. And the last time I worked out, the only time I worked out last week was Tuesday night. So I'm pretty sure it was Tuesday. So yeah, I mean, that was a week long,
Yeah.
process of finding that. So
Hmm.
if I had to guess, I think the Raiders would be happy with a first and a second, I want to say. I
Hmm.
mean, if they can still get that for him, and it depends on what the issue is, but if a team like the Ravens, who, they're not building for the future, like they're competing now.
Yeah.
They're on Lamar's timeline, which is right now. If they backed out of that at two first rounders, which, are usually lower picks for them because they're usually good,
Yeah.
um, I think that's really telling that something might be seriously off here. Um,
Hmm.
so, I mean, I expect the Bears to sniff around again. I know the Cowboys were getting a lot of heat, um, or were picking up some steam going into the trade. So I kind of expect those
Hmm.
two to be back in, especially the Cowboys, because just knowing Jerry Jones, like, he wants to make that impact trade, um, especially
Hmm.
after losing Parsons, which was his own fault. So yeah, I'm interested to see where if I mean I still think he'll go somewhere. I would be surprised if no one took a flyer on him. Um, it's going to depend on how much the Raiders are willing to lower their tag on him, basically. Um,
Yeah.
if they're
I think we just might need a little bit more clarity on what exactly it is first.
right. I mean that too, but I'm interested, how low do the Raiders go before they say, all right, it's worth it just to keep him around? Um,
Hmm.
because I do think they're in that weird spot where we know, barring something crazy, that they're going to take Mendoza first overall pick. And a lot of mistake that
Hmm.
teams make when they draft a quarterback the first round is they don't give him anyone to surround him with. So he
Yeah.
just has a bad first year because he's on a bad team. Um, so, I think there is a little worth to, keep Crosby around to at least keep the team competitive while
Yeah.
Mendoza kind of figures it out. But it just depends on what the issue is and how low they're willing to go. Um, we don't need to really talk about it. I did like the Raiders just signed Lindebaum today,
Yeah.
the center, which,
Yeah.
you know,
I was just gonna say, not really talking about one specific player, but they had a pretty good day yesterday. I think they had several signings or reported signings that I think were pretty good. So they were definitely
mhm.
throwing some money around.
So, um, obviously the biggest piece yet to fall is probably Trey Hendrickson from Cincy. I think most people
Hmm.
had him as the one or two free agent. Um, so, that's another player that someone like the Bears are definitely going to be looking around. Um, for the signings yesterday, I guess the most high profile was probably Walker, I want to say.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
at least going to a new
I
team. I
didn't
know
really see
it's
that coming.
I thought I'm not surprised they got a running back. I thought they were going to probably draft
Yeah.
Jeremiah Love. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, he's a good running back. I don't even think he's a
Yeah.
great running back. Um, I mean,
Hmm.
I think the Super Bowl MVP kind of boosted him a little bit. Um,
Yeah.
he's not one of those top tier guys. And he's really a bell cow running back too. Um, and noise. It's a rice maker, I think. I hope. And
Hmm.
it feels like the Chiefs have more glaring issues than running back. Um, I mean, they need to figure out what their QB situation is. I mean, they need to figure out what Mahomes' timeline is. Um,
Yeah.
And like, I mean, yeah, the running back room hasn't been great, but at the same time, it's like, usually that's not what's going to carry you to the promised land is a good running back. And, I'm always weary of teams spending money on running backs because I think we've seen that with the right coach, the right system, and really the right offensive line, you can make, mid-tier running backs look really, really good.
Mm.
Um, and it's such a disposable position. Besides those top couple guys at the top of the league, who right now would probably be Robinson, CMC, obviously. Besides those top couple of guys, I'm always wary of making moves to go get a running back. Because I think
Mm.
again, you got the right system, you got the right coach, you can make kind of middling running backs look really, really good. So yeah, and yeah, I mean, not surprised they got a running back. I'm a little surprised they went after him though. Um,
Yeah, who it was. Yeah, I think for me that was I just didn't see that happening. You mentioned, the rumor about them drafting Jeremiah Love. I just don't think that was going to be realistic that he's going to fall down that low. I think there were several teams ahead of them. I think they're ninth in the draft order. There are several teams ahead of them that I think are going to need a running back. At first, I would have said the Saints, but
yeah,
obviously they signed a running back yesterday as well. So now I think maybe he could fall to like the Commanders or something. But I just would have been really surprised if Jeremiah Love fell down to nine. Shout out Jeremiah Love, Notre Dame. But yeah,
yeah,
I think it was actually that I think the signing of Kenneth Walker, I actually thought it was a really good one. I think he's a solid running back. Obviously, kind of some more veteran status. I do think you're right. They probably paid a little bit of a Super Bowl MVP kind of premium
hmm
for him. But, at the same time, I do think I might disagree a little bit. I think that that was by far their biggest kind of issue. Um, and I do think you're right that their offense isn't necessarily going to be as reliant on that, but they do need a solid run game and obviously a good offensive line if they're going to be able to get Mahomes back to the level that he has excelled at in the past. And you're right, they do need some more clarity on him. I've heard a lot of conflicting timelines. I've heard like week one, week five. So it seems like it's very possible that he could not be ready for the beginning of the season. So I do think there's still a lot more questions to answer in Kansas City.
yeah. I don't, I don't know. I mean, yeah, maybe I underplayed that a little bit. Like, I think as I saw firsthand last year in Chicago, like a good running back room opens up a lot for you for the team. Um, So yeah, maybe I underplayed it a little bit, and obviously he's more than serviceable, but they have a lot of questions that they still need to answer. Um, Kind of to start wrapping up on this segment, some other big notable moves. Malik Willis got a bag for like the 6 games he played last season. He's going to Miami to presumably be their starter over Quinn
That was a good
Ewers,
move.
which I'm
Mm,
always hesitant on that too. I mean, being a good backup's different than being a good starter. Um,
yeah.
so as I saw firsthand with um, God, I don't even remember his name. That's how useless he was. The old Tampa backup who the Bears signed um, to be their starter, and then he was quickly replaced by Trubisky. Oh, what was his? It was Mike. Is it
Oh,
Mike's
yeah.
the
I want to
base
say Gordon.
backup?
It's not Gordon.
No, it's not Gordon. It's
Um,
Glennon or
yeah. Oh, yeah. Mike Glennon.
is it Mike Glennon? Yeah, Mike Glennon.
Yep.
Um, like played well as a backup. Someone signed him as a starter, completely shit the bed. So I'm always a little
Yeah.
hesitant about that. I mean, the saving grace about Willis is like, he obviously came in. He was pretty highly touted coming out of college, kind of slid in the draft eventually before the Titans took him, but there was always potential there. So now we'll just have to see. And he's going with, Heffley, the DC, to Miami. So
Mhm.
he's somewhat familiar with the head coach, even though they were on other sides of the ball. Um, Packers, just speaking on the Packers, also lost Romeo Dobbs today. Signed a big
Yep.
4 year, $68 million contract in New England. So, Pat's giving Drake May some more weapons. Always a good thing. Travis Etienne went to New Orleans. We talked about them possibly been in a
Yep.
landing spot for Love. Probably not anymore with Etienne. Um, I'm just kind
Mike
of
Evans,
scroll.
49ers.
Mike Evans going to the 49. I'm interested to see how that turns out. Assuming the
Yeah.
assuming the electrical station doesn't get to him, because he already has
Yep.
his injury history, or not. Actually, no, he doesn't.
Mm.
I don't know what I'm saying. I mean, besides last year, like he's been obviously very reliable.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yep.
you know, I'm always jury's always out on the Niners because every year they come in with a great team on paper and always fall short somewhat. So I will. I like the move. Like gives them another weapon, especially because Ayuk is up in the air. I don't know what happened to him.
Mm.
Um, but they'll probably be very good again. But like I said, they're always good. Just can never get the job done. Um, I guess the only other one that we'll talk about, the only other major one was what the hell are the Falcons doing? Um, they've
I
dug
saw that
themselves
yesterday.
they've dug themselves in such a shitty hole in the quarterback situation.
Yeah.
Because I mean, going back to before I guess the 24 draft, they signed Kirk Cousins to a big deal after he had a nice stint in Minnesota. Like, all right, here's their starter. They used what was it, the eighth or ninth? I think it was the eighth pick. It was one ahead of the Bears picking Odunze. They used that pick on Penix. Um,
Yep.
so it's like, okay, like I'm all for drafting a quarterback to develop under a starter. Why are you using a top 10 pick on it? And now
Yep.
Cousins blew up, Penix's knee blew up, and now they're bringing in concussion boy Tua. And like
Yep.
I think Tua's good. Like Tua's a good quarterback, but he's just,
Yeah.
I mean, he's one concussion away from not being able to walk. Like, I just don't know what they're doing because the Falcons have a good team on paper. Like almost everywhere else, they have a good team. Like
Hmm.
top tier running back in Bijan. Kyle Pitts kind of finally figured it out last year. I think the defense was actually pretty decent. And you have a good head coach now in Stefanski, who I really like.
Yeah.
It's like you better hope one of these two figures it out because they need it after it's just you want to hear about a messing up the quarterback situation. That is kind of, I think that's the poster boy of it right now. It's just what the hell are they even doing?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that was kind of a curious move. I mean, I think you're right. I wouldn't be completely shocked if he played at least a good stretch there. But I mean, you're right. It seems like he's always just one injury from just like, being a vegetable basically. And I hate to say that, but I'm not really sure that he should be playing, you know,
Probably
as it
not.
is.
No.
Like he's had a lot of really serious injuries and head trauma. So I don't think it's really a great idea to begin with. But I mean, he's still shown an ability to play, decent football, and he did have a lot of weapons around him in Miami. So maybe, if he's on like an all-around solid team where he doesn't need to score like 70 points a game, maybe things
Mm,
work out better. I don't know. But, I just found that to be a very strange move.
yeah, I'm so interested to see how that turns out. Um, I mean, the thing is, they're obviously still there. I think it's pretty clear he's a stopgap until Penix gets healthy. Um, but even when
Yeah.
Penix is healthy, I'm not sold on him still. So, um,
Oh, no, no.
who knows? Um, to wrap up here, some of the bigger names still out there, even though, we're kind of the list is dwindling. Um, I did not realize that Tyreek Hill is a free agent. Um, that'll be that's going to be an interesting gamble for somebody. Trey Hendrickson, like I
Mhm.
said, probably the best still on the market, at least on the defensive end. Um, Taylor Decker,
Mhm.
the Lions let go their left tackle. Um, he's someone I actually wouldn't mind the Bears picking up. Um, Christian Kirk, or as Stephen A calls him, Charlie.
Yeah.
Um,
Yep.
all right, lightning round, because I think this is kind of interesting of the last
Okay.
group of free agents still available, even though there's still a ton, obviously. Do you think Aaron Rodgers goes somewhere?
I do. Mm, I, like he clearly. I honestly, I don't really know about him. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like last year I was obviously a rebound for him,
He had a nice year,
but
yeah.
yeah, but I don't know. I don't know, and it's also really hard to say, with what's going on there, either. So,
Yeah, I mean,
I wouldn't be surprised, I guess,
on
but
one hand, I would have expected him to announce it by now, like, hey, I'm
yeah,
done. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy to just wait until he's not signed and then be like, actually, I'm retiring.
yeah,
But at the same time, knowing him, maybe not. Like, you never know with him
yeah,
and his decision making.
hmm,
Outside of Pittsburgh, going back to Pittsburgh, now that his old buddy Mike is there, I don't know who
yeah,
I don't really know where he goes. Um,
yeah,
I mean, I don't know who takes a chance on him, with his age and expects, and he's not going to go be a backup for somebody. I think he's above that. So
yeah,
he probably thinks he's above that.
and
So
he's
yeah,
he's
I don't,
probably not gonna get a
um,
really cheap deal either.
so besides Pittsburgh, I don't really know where he goes, but
Yeah.
I am intrigued to see where that goes, if anywhere. All right, we're gonna wrap things up. Oh,
Mhm.
Geno Smith back to the Jets. It's gonna lead him to the promised land. Let's go. All right. Oh, last thing. The Jets trading for Mika Fitzpatrick, who only had one interception last year, which would still be an improvement on their season total. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's freaking hilarious. So, all right, we're gonna take a quick break, and
I
then
do
when we
like
come
that
back,
trade.
yeah, I do too for him actually. Jokes aside. So, all right, let's take a quick break, and then when we're
Yep.
back, we'll keep moving through some topics. And welcome back. Bo and I are back from our little break as we're going to keep just talk about some of the things going on in the sports world before we get into our next serious conversation point. But I do want to ask, did you follow the F1 race this weekend?
No, I couldn't have
Oh my
even told you it was
God.
happening.
My whole
Yeah.
episode did nothing. Shit.
Yeah, no. I honestly, if I'm just surprised to learn that there was an F1 race
This
last
this
weekend.
was the one to watch too, because it was Saturday night at
Who won?
8:50. Let's see if you remember what team he is. George Russell.
Oh God, no. It's
Okay.
not a name I even remember you talking about. I'm not gonna lie.
George Russell won for Mercedes, who was supposed to win. Kimi
Uh,
Antonelli, who is his partner, came in second, and then Charles Leclerc came in third. You remember who
okay.
Charles Leclerc races for?
Oh yeah, for Ferrari?
Yeah, there you go. Um,
Okay.
and
Well,
then
he's one of the like two or three people that I
and
actually
then,
knew.
and
So
then
other than that,
Lewis
I wouldn't.
Lewis Hamilton came in fourth, also for Ferrari. So, um,
Uh,
though my goat Max started the race in 20th, ended up in sixth place. So, pretty damn good race by him.
okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to something that you can talk about. How about we were just talking about it before we started recording the Division Three version, but NCAA basketball playoffs coming up. We
Yeah.
won't be talking about the Division Three bracket. Um, other than I know your
Good.
Gorloks, the women's team is unfortunately out. Did the men's team win too? Did they go to the tournament?
No, They lost on a buzzer beater in the conference final game against the Mississippi
Damn,
women. So,
damn.
yep,
There's missed that Mississippi women's team. Always seem to be a
yep,
pain in your side. Um,
they are.
for those who don't know, the Miss was it Mississippi's college women's college or College of Women
Mississippi University for women.
is actually an all gender school.
Yes,
So, and they won the
yes,
men's tournament. That's fucking hilarious. All right. The
yeah,
Division One tournament starts very soon. Most of the big tournaments, the conference tournaments, are going on this weekend. My roommate's actually up
yep,
at the Big Ten one right now in Chicago. Um, and we'll do a more in-depth March Madness
yeah,
episode once the bracket's been set. So probably next week, actually, we'll probably do a bit more
yeah.
of a
Next week.
we'll do a bit more of an in-depth one because I think as of now, only last I checked, only three teams have gotten their automatic bid. Um, I
Yeah,
can't tell you the third one. One of them was Long Island won whatever conference they're in, and then Northern Iowa won the MVC tournament somehow as the
yeah.
sixth seed. Um,
Hmm.
First Missouri
The
Valley
ASUN
team,
one was Sunday, I think.
yeah, so that's probably the one I'm missing. Oh, and because I was watching it, Tennessee State won the OVC. So,
Okay.
couple of the mid majors. The
Hmm.
obviously the MVC always produces somebody who actually usually wins a round or two. As Mizzou fans know well from last tournament,
Yeah.
when Bennett
Maybe not
Sturts
this year though.
when Bennett Sturts and the Drake Bulldogs, took them to town. Um, I
Yeah.
Well, I'm not super in tune with men's basketball in the Valley because I work for the women's team.
Hmm.
You and I, the little I know about them, they are your prototypical drag them through the mud kind of team. Like low scoring games are their bread and butter. So I think they're probably at the 13 seed, I'm guessing. So
Yeah.
if they get the right matchup, who does not like that play style, and they can force them to play that style, I know that's a big ask, but it might, maybe. You and I is one of those MVC teams that actually has a pretty decent NCAA history. Them and
Yeah, they
Drake,
do.
and then
Yeah.
obviously before they left, Wichita State and Loyola. So, um,
Yeah. Yeah.
anyways, we won't talk about the MVC much longer. You
Good.
okay? Settle down there. Hashtag Valley runs deep. Um, I don't know if there's really I'm not a super big college basketball fan. I pay attention, but not like super in depth. Just from what I've gathered, there doesn't seem to be a super consensus number one this year. Um,
No.
the closest would what maybe Michigan, maybe. Though they just lost, I think, didn't they?
Yeah,
So
there's just yeah, there's just not really a consensus. I
I
mean,
mean,
you might actually be a little bit surprised. This is the college basketball is one of the sports I follow a little bit more closely.
yeah.
Like March is probably my favorite month of the year for sports. But yeah, it's
Hmm,
definitely interesting this year when you have, you know, I think there's, you know, 8 to 12 teams that could theoretically win a championship this
really.
year, and I would not be surprised. I don't think there's any there's just not a lot of separation, and that's
Yeah.
because a lot of the teams in the top 10 to 12 have played each other a bunch, and there's been some mixed results. So it's just kind of a pick 'em. You really couldn't make a solid argument for why one team is or two teams are, kind of separated themselves. I think any of the ones or two seeds this year are going to be really, really tough outs. So, this could be a year where there's not, any of those like random upsets in the first two rounds.
So
And even this year, a lot of the three seeds are pretty solid too.
so what you're kind of predicting is kind of a bloodbath at the top, but there's a decent level of separation between that top tier, which is quite large, but then that kind of next
Yeah,
tier. Because I mean, I've
yeah,
heard
yeah,
Michigan a lot. I live with an OSU fan, so I hear about Michigan all the time. Um, Michigan, Arizona, Houston. Um, Florida's
Duke,
having a
Purdue.
Duke, Duke. I forgot about Duke. Purdue's.
Yeah,
I've been burned by Purdue.
yeah,
Um, Florida's having a good year again. Almost under the radar a little
yeah,
bit. I thought they were top 10 in the rankings,
yeah.
weren't they? So, I think
I mean, it was for a while, but that the SEC is kind of having a down
I
year.
know they're
Last year
having a
they were
down year.
really,
Yeah,
really good. This year, I would be really surprised if there's any teams from the SEC in the Elite Eight. I would
really.
be surprised. Yeah, I really, it's this year. It's the Big Ten, the Big 12, the ACC has, one or two pretty solid teams. You always have to watch out for like Gonzaga, obviously. But yeah, I think if you were going to point to anyone, you could say Arizona has looked really, really solid.
Right.
So I think they would maybe be who's, some of the insiders would kind of lean towards, but it's a total wide open race at this point.
All right. Um, Going back to mid-major land, what's your take on Miami, Ohio?
Yeah.
Obviously
Um,
they finished the regular season undefeated.
yeah.
I watched the game that they did it on against Ohio, which
Mhm.
was a really damn good game actually. Um,
Yeah.
and obviously they win the MAC they're in for sure. And then we could talk about
Mhm.
seeding and all that. But say they don't win the MAC, they lose in the tournament. Where do you stand on
Mhm.
them getting an at large?
So my position is that they should be in. It doesn't really matter what happens in their tournament, and I think slowly that's what kind of the consensus position is starting to be. I don't know if you heard about this a couple weeks ago, but Bruce Pearl,
Yeah,
obviously the former coach of Auburn, was
right,
kind of arguing in favor of his nepo son, who is
right.
leading a 16 and 15 Auburn team to, potentially get that hypothetical last at large spot over Miami of Ohio. Last weekend, he actually recanted and said that
Yeah.
now he thinks that they're in no matter what. I just think, listen, part of the reason why I think that that's the case this year is like this is maybe the weakest bubble that we've
Mm,
seen in recent memory that I can remember. Like I mean, basically the last 2 weeks on the bubble has been a total bloodbath. Like all of the teams have just continued to lose and lose and lose. And so it's kind of hard to make, a solid argument for, oh, well, this really, really like mid Power Five team that's, basically playing 500 basketball should be in over some of these mid-major teams like a Miami of Ohio. Like I think sure you could argue that if they played any of the top teams they would probably lose, but they're not any worse than any team that's going to be seated in the like 5 to 10 range. Like they've definitely played well this year and they've earned in my opinion an at-large bid. And I do think it's interesting that they're not actually favored to win their conference tournament, but maybe that just shows you also how good Akron is
Akron's
in their
very good. Yeah.
conference. But I just think it's interesting because this year I just don't think there's that much drama on the bubble
Mm,
because so many teams have just knocked themselves out. Like going into conference championship week, we have a pretty good idea, of who's going to be in the field. There's always a chance for some bid thieves, but so far some of those potential teams have already been knocked out, like Oregon was today. So I do think it's going to be interesting. One conference that I would just say maybe keep an eye on is the A10.
yeah.
Obviously, SLU was kind of flying under the radar for a little bit. There's probably still the favorites to win that conference tournament. They've kind of had some hiccups the last couple weeks. And they're obviously going to be in either way, whether they win or not. But there's several teams in the A10 that I think could, maybe be solid picks, not only to maybe fight SLU for the title this week, but maybe to make a run. I think if you want to look at a team like VCU,
VCU.
who I th I think just beat SLU last week. I could be mistaken, but I think they've beaten SLU at least once this year.
I think you're
They're
right.
kind of a sneaky team. George
Dayton's,
Mason, kind of a sneaky team.
yeah,
Dayton is
Dayton's
obviously
always
always
a
a threat.
threat. Yeah,
So that's one conference that I'd say watch out for.
yeah. I mean, jumping back to Miami, um, I think the only point that I'm going to question them a little bit is if they get knocked out round one, um, of the MAC tournament. That's when I'm going to be like, okay, maybe we do put the brakes on a little bit. Um, I think if they at least get to the championship game, I think they have to be in no matter what. I think they get past round one. I'm still pretty in favor of them getting in. Yeah, you look at the underlying metrics and the net rankings and all that, BS that detractors will bring up. Yeah, they are very middle of the pack. And they don't rank super highly against a lot of those mid-tier to lower tier P5 schools. Forget in college basketball, it's really P5. Um, but at the same time, it's like, they went what 30, 31 and 0, 30 or 31 and 0. I think it was 31.
Yeah,
Um,
31.
like you do have to take that into effect. I mean, no matter who they're playing,
Yeah.
and it's not like they're playing scrubs either. Like they're playing legitimate D1 programs. They're mid-majors, but like, they're
Yeah.
not going out and playing, their whole I think they only had, two or three non-D1 games, which most schools do.
Hmm.
Um, so I mean, the fact that they went up against a 90% D1 schedule and didn't even, have an off day once, really. Like they won all of them.
Yeah.
I think that says more than it really needs to. And even if they lose round one, I'm still in favor of them getting in, but that's where I could see, the selection committee and some of the pundits might start going after them a little bit more is if they get knocked out in their first game. Not saying I agree with them, but I think that's where some trouble could stem from. I think if they, again, even if they're runner up in the conference, I think they should be a no-brainer. So,
Yeah. I think they've earned their spot. So I think they should be good.
um, yeah, I don't know. I'm like you said, I'm excited to see how the seeding turns out. I mean, just because that's kind of when I really start to perk my ears up about college basketball.
Hmm.
But like you said, and like like I said, and as you expanded on, like that, it doesn't seem to be a huge consensus about number one, number two, whatever. So I'm really interested to see where teams end up falling. And obviously it depends a lot on what happens this weekend in some of those major tournaments. Um, but yeah, it should be, I think, as always, it should be a fun one because, like you alluded to, even if it is a bunch of number ones and twos in the final four and eight and whatever, final four, elite eight, um, like you said, there's still a bunch of jumbling kind of going on there. So
Yeah.
there's not a clear, there's not a UConn coming through, just
Hmm.
kind of bullying everybody like they did a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So UConn's another team to kind of be interested at because they're always
Yep.
a
Yep.
threat, but
Throw them in there as well.
they didn't even win the regular season title. Ricky P did. So um,
Yep.
the mob boss himself. Um, yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting. Any other college basketball thoughts? Like I said, we'll kind of expand on this more next week once we really know the field. But
Yeah, I think we can probably wait till next week to give a little bit more in depth, but definitely looking forward to it.
all right, well, the last major point that we had, and we could always throw a couple more in depending on time. Obviously, the now the big international tournament that Americans care about, the World Baseball Classic going on currently. Pool play is done or is wrapping up very, very soon.
Hmm.
Um, how much do you pay attention to the WBC?
Yeah, it's weird. I remember the last time it was 2 years ago, when the U.S. played Japan in the final. I watched a lot of the tournament. I haven't really watched much of it so far. Obviously, seen a lot of like clips and stuff from it. Like
Right.
I actually think the idea of it's pretty cool, and so I will probably watch, the later rounds when they happen. Um, But yeah, for whatever reason, like maybe it's just because some of the like, countries in the pool play just there's just not much going on. Like maybe that's why it's not quite as interesting, but I generally haven't paid that much attention to the, first couple rounds other than some of the highlights or maybe controversies.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like you said, like I pay attention to it um mostly online. I don't know if I'll have, just with my schedule too, if I'll have time to really sit down and watch some of the later games. Something I've thought about it, and I kind of had this I've had this discussion with other people about Olympic hockey too, which is, do you draw a line at allowing professionals to compete in these types of things in the Olympics and the World Baseball Classic? Um, because I'm kind of I see two sides to it really. Um, if they truly want this to be, best of the best, um, best players in this sport that the world has to offer, then yeah, it's going to be
Hmm.
mostly MLB players, at least for the major teams like US, like Japan,
Yeah.
Mexico, some of those other South American, Caribbean
Puerto Rico,
countries, Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, so on and
Dominican.
so forth. Just like in Olympic hockey, US, Sweden, Canada, those guys are mostly NHLers. So on that point, it's like if you want to see the best that the sport has to offer, like you have to pull from the US professional league because that's where the best in the world are. The other side of it for me is at a certain point, you're just kind of watching an all-star game, especially in the later rounds, US and, if it gets to US and
Yeah.
Japan or US and Mexico or whoever, like you're really just watching MLB All-Stars, which I think kind of takes away from a little bit of the magic of it. Um, because the one thing I do enjoy about the earlier rounds, because I don't pay much attention, is these, the stories that come out of it with the players. Like today, I just
Yeah.
saw, was the pitcher
The
for, was
Czech
it
pitcher.
the Czech pitcher who's, an electrician. Like that's literally his day
Yeah.
job. And then he came out and played pretty well against, I forget who they were playing, but someone much
He
better than
pitched
them.
four shutout innings against Japan.
Yeah, that's right. So, like stories like that, or I forget, was it Venezuela maybe? The MLB or former MLB player's son, who's like 19, pitched against the U.S.
Oh, I saw that.
and
I
I,
think it
I
was Brazil or Mexico.
I think it was Brazil. It was Brazil. I'm
Yeah, it
fairly
was
certain,
Brazil.
and I forgot
Yeah,
I forgot the kid's name and I forgot who his dad was who played in the MLB. But like
yeah,
I think that's some of the cooler stories to come out of it are these guys who aren't professionals, like they're going up against absolute Goliaths and usually playing, not usually, but often sometimes play pretty well. So I don't know. That's kind of where I'm torn on it. Is, do we want the absolute best players this sport has to offer? But at that, the price for that is you're basically just watching the MLB showcase.
yeah. I mean, for me personally, I think I'd have a hard time like watching it or caring that much if it wasn't, like the top players. Like maybe I could see if it'd be kind of cool if there was like a showcase of maybe like the up and coming prospects or something.
Right.
But I just don't think I don't think I could really get into it if it was a bunch of amateur players. I think really part of it is I don't think there's a need to shorten, the field or make it into more like a four nation sort of thing. Although I think that would, maybe be more sufficient, rather than having a, you know, 3, 4 week, kind of, competition take place with a bunch of countries that really don't have any business playing in some of these games. Like they're not competitive. Like I could see maybe more moving towards like not a four nations, but like 8 or something or 16
Yeah.
teams, and just changing the format because like obviously what's starting to happen now is okay, you'll get players that aren't maybe they're not good enough for Team USA, so they'll start, stretching their ancestry and they're playing for
Right.
Great Britain or they're, playing for these other countries. which I guess is sort of cool for them to maybe to honor, parts of their heritage. But I just think at a certain point, it's just kind of ridiculous. Like, and that's obviously no disrespect to those countries, but it's just like Great Britain and Israel and some of these other countries where we see that they're not really known for baseball, obviously,
Right.
and you wouldn't expect them to be, or the Czech Republic, you wouldn't expect them to be competitive in a competition like this, and I think that could be something that's addressed. But overall, I think it's a really enjoyable tournament, and I would not really be a fan of them, stopping the professional players from playing.
Yeah, I mean, if you had to ask me to pick, I would say keep the pros in it. I think maybe the fit, not the fix, but maybe what I would suggest is somehow capping how many pros are in it, if that makes sense. So
Hmm.
you could either say like, you're fielding a team of 28, right? Only half can be MLB guys. Um, and that kind of gives you that nice mix of, yes, we have these absolute mashers, these all-stars, but we also have, 14 other guys who are college kids or, amateurs or whatever. Um, and I don't know, maybe that would make it a little more interesting because you still get that name recognition of those, those MLBers, but you also get those cool stories about, this guy does plumbing during the week, but he can throw a fastball 95 miles per hour. Like I don't know.
75.
Sorry, well, you know, hey, that Czech guy threw a
I
shutout.
yeah, I'm not saying that I don't like those stories. I just don't really like I don't mean to use this in a derogatory way, but that just sort of seems like DEI for less good baseball players. Like I don't think we need to be
Got to
like,
get rid of it.
if you're gonna have if you're gonna have this tournament showcasing the best players, you might as well let the best players play,
Yeah, and I
is
mean that,
my
you know,
theory of the case.
that is where I kind of lean more towards letting them play because yeah, if it's supposed to be the best in the world, well, it just so happens that the best players in the world play for the MLB, except maybe one or two,
Yeah.
guys over in Japan or the Korean League or
Hmm.
whatever. Like, yeah, the
Yeah.
90% of those guys are major leaguers, and that's just it's the same thing with Olympic hockey. Like, the best players in the world, no matter where they're from, they're probably in the NHL. So, um, I don't know. I just think it's an interesting discussion to have. Um, I mean, it seems like we're destined for a U.S. Japan rematch. Um, though the U.S. did struggle a little with Mexico last night, I believe it was. Um,
Yeah.
so I mean, you never know, but
Supposedly the Chinese Taipei team's pretty good too.
I did not know they had a team. But there you go. Um,
Yeah,
team,
I didn't realize either, but they had like the third best odds for some reason.
huh? I wonder who they have. That's kind of surprised they got better odds than some of those South American teams and
Yeah.
Mexico and
Yeah.
Caribbean teams. Um,
Hmm.
it's also really fun to just see who comes out of the woodwork for these teams that do need to fill roster spots.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, what the hell is Yadier Molina doing? Who's he man? He's managing what, Puerto Rico?
Puerto Rico. Yeah.
Okay. Um, or Albert
Okay.
Pujols.
I was clearly duped on something about Chinese Taipei. I'll just
Yeah,
say
I
that.
was, I was,
Where did I see that? This is why you
definitely,
always fact check
you definitely
yourself.
saw it
Yeah.
on Twitter, man. There's no.
Yeah. Where did I?
Well, you know what? I'm riding with you
Maybe I was
now.
thinking it. I might have been thinking of like Korea or something, but even then, still, like, where did I get that from?
Yeah, that's pretty crazy, man. Uh,
Okay, well, why don't we just forget I said that?
I'll go
But
Chinese
yes,
Taipei.
we do appear to be, we do. I mean, I'm sure they are getting knocked out in the group stage. So let's just say yes, you're probably right. We're headed for a rematch.
Um, which it'll be a good game. It is fun to see, kind of like the Four Nations tournament. Like these guys, they take it to heart.
Hmm.
Um, Now I've seen a cut like I think Kiki Hernandez did, where he's like, this is equivalent to playing in the World Series, and I'm like, well.
Mhm.
maybe. Someone
Yeah.
who's won a couple World Series could probably say that. Um, so I don't know if I completely buy that, but like it
Yeah.
is fun again, especially those lower tier teams who aren't expected to win or really do anything. Like it is fun to see them, kind of wear their hearts on their sleeves a little bit regarding, representing their
Hmm.
nation because they usually don't have other chances to do so. Um, so, and spring training still going on. So if you don't care for it, well, you got
Yeah.
somewhat meaningless baseball to MLB baseball to care about still too. So, um,
How have you felt about the Cubbies so far?
I don't really pay much. I mean, I see the scores and I don't really pay a ton of attention in spring training, at least until the end. Because that early spring training, because where are we at? Halfway-ish? Yeah, about halfway through now. Um, they're just if the starters play, they play for an inning or two. Um, so that's I kind of I don't really dig too deep into it. Um, I don't know. I always find it hard to take spring training super seriously. I mean, speaking for the Cubs, they've had years where they, were towards the top of the spring training standings, and then they had a very middling season. Um, but I think it was when they won the World Series, they had a terrible spring training record. And then they went on and, did what they did that year. So I always find hard to put a little stock into it. Um, I wouldn't say I haven't, as far as I'm aware, no major injuries have happened to them during spring training. So I would say my outlook
Hmm.
for them in this season is it's still the same as it was, when we talked about the MLB a couple
Yeah.
weeks back.
Fair enough.
Um,
By the way, I should mention, I don't know why I didn't think about this, but for some reason, ESPN was referring to Chinese Taipei as Taipei instead of Taiwan. So not to start any geopolitical drama, but they should
ah,
have referred to them as Taiwan. And I didn't catch that. And then I was just thinking about it and was like, huh, that's strange. So clearly ESPN is involved with the Chinese Communist Party because they're Taiwan.
they're a plant. I knew it. I fucking knew it.
Well, that's just very strange. I don't know why they do that.
Well, I think we know why they would do it, but um,
Yeah.
they they got
Well,
they gotta
they
sell
shouldn't
some
have done it.
they gotta sell some subscriptions somewhere. So um,
Well, I, I just want to apologize for that, for falling for
don't
their
worry.
propaganda.
We'll cut that. I'll cut this part out. So you'll always refer to them as
Okay. Well, I'm
Chinese
sure they'll.
Taipei.
No, they're gonna. It's Taiwan. Although at this point, this episode probably will not be available for to be viewed in China. So
Oh, well, I don't know. Maybe there's one Chinese person over there who really enjoys our content. So if you're watching from
well,
China,
episode 5 is
if you're watching from
shout out,
China,
but it
comment and subscribe. Um,
yeah, shout out. It is Taiwan, but you probably won't be able to see this. So my bad.
someone's gonna like ADR audio in where you're like, you said it is
Mm-mm.
Taiwan. It's gonna be like it is, and then an AI voice, Chinese Taipei. Uh, it's like, no, wait, what I said.
No. Yeah.
Um, all right, well, that's all. Again, this week was just kind of catching up a little bit after we missed last week. We'll talk about Arch Madness. I don't want to talk about Arch Madness. We'll talk about March Madness next week. Um,
Yeah.
of any other
The superior
stirring.
madness.
Uh, let me tell you, Mister. Um, if the dogs actually did anything worth a damn, I might disagree. But
Mm.
um, any other stirring sports stories you wanted to get off your chest before we wrap up?
Not really. Hopefully, you watch the Players Championship this week. It's a pretty big golf tournament. I don't know
Yeah,
if you're aware that's going on, but
no,
I'm
I wasn't.
sure you'll probably at least see it on TV this weekend. So
Maybe I don't know where I'm going to be. I'm either going to be here or Coralville, Iowa. So we'll find out. For since
we'll
this is
see.
a pu-
Yeah,
since this is a public public podcast, I won't say what I think is going to happen. But um,
yeah.
We'll
Fair
we'll we'll,
enough.
we'll leave it at that. Um,
Yep.
yeah, no, I'll be sure to catch that. Um,
Hmm.
we are gonna do a golf episode at some point. You let me have the
Yeah.
F1. You let me have the Formula One episode, so I'm gonna let you have that. Um,
Yeah. Either a golf or a tennis one. I'd be fine with either.
oh boy. Well, hey man, it's up to you.
Yeah.
Um, speaking of, since you didn't even know that the season started this last weekend, uh, I know you're gonna tune in. Well, we were just talking about the Chinese Grand Prix is this weekend. Um,
Oh, okay.
so be sure to tune in at 2 a.m. on Sunday for race day. Um, 2 a.m.
I
local
can
time.
pretty much promise you I will be asleep at that time, so
I
it's a
might just,
bonus.
I've thought about how I'm going to do it. I, I thought about going to sleep and then waking up and watching the replay, but I might just say fuck it and stay up the whole time and watch it. So
Are you someone who could watch a replay of a sporting event and be okay with that? Like
it
if you
has,
hadn't like heard about the result or something?
it has to be, if I hear about the result, it kind of takes away from it. So what I've done
Yeah.
before is usually how I've watched races before is, say the race is at like 7 or 8 our time.
Hmm.
I'll wake up at like 9:30 and turn it on immediately. And I just won't go on Twitter. Because Twitter is where I see most of my news
Hmm.
for it. Um, in,
Okay.
the few instances where I don't watch it when I wake up and I watch it later at night, which I've done before, um, I just do my best to stay off of Twitter all day long. Um,
Gotcha.
because Instagram I could use,
That would be tough for me.
I don't follow many F1 things on Instagram, so I can usually avoid it. Twitter, it's most of my
Hmm.
feed, so I would have a really hard time.
Okay.
So, um, but no, I think this one I'm just gonna say screw it, and unless I have to get up early Sunday, say I'm just gonna stay up till 2 and watch
Yeah.
it. So, all right,
Yeah.
and I know you'll be
Okay.
watching.
By the
I know
way,
you'll what?
I was just gonna say I'm glad to hear that we're still referring to it as Twitter. So Twitter and Taiwan are in,
Oh,
and X and
listen,
Chinese Taipei are
as
out.
someone who works in a field where uh Twitter and social media is a big part of your job. I've never heard
Mhm.
anyone I work with or who I've, come
Yeah.
across with in my travels refer to it as X. It is
Yeah.
always still Twitter.
Yeah. That's
Um, I think I
yeah. That's
saw it
true.
once, I think on like a pair of day notes, someone said like, follow us on X. And I'm like, that's just not right.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
no,
There's yeah.
it's Twitter. So,
Yep.
alrighty. Well, Bubba, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday night, and I will hopefully see you next week after hopefully survive a trip to the whatever it is. They're not the corn state. What is Iowa? Are they the corn state? That's Nebraska.
Yeah.
No, Iowa's the corn
Oh,
state?
yeah. Same thing.
I mean, it is.
No, no, it's Nebraska. Yeah. I mean, there's a
Well,
lot of corn produced there,
oh well,
I
trust
think.
me, I know. The Hawkeye state. Damn it, I knew it. Um,
The Hawkeye State. Gotcha. Yeah.
well, hopefully I survive my
Oh,
travels up there, and we can
yep.
talk about some college basketball next week.
Sounds good.
All right. Take care, all. Go Gorloks. Um,
Yep. Go Gorloks.
fuck Philip Rivers. Still bringing that back.
Yep.
I hope he signs somewhere,
Yep.
Bubba, just to piss you off.
I really don't see that happening. I'm
All
not gonna
right.
lie to you,
Well,
Peter.
I didn't
Over
see
my,
him
over
coming.
my dead body.
I didn't. Jesus Christ. I didn't see him coming back in the middle of last year. So anything can happen.
No, and unfortunately, I had to see it. So
Man, Bubba's just a hater. All righty.
hey, you brought it up.
Yeah, because I want to make you feel bad for dissing on America's sweetheart.
I don't feel bad anymore. He's a nice guy, I'm sure, but I don't feel bad about dissing on his play.
All righty. All right. Enough of that. See y'all next week.
See, America.
Wow, big audience.